Title: The Great Reset of the 1800s They Erased. Intro. We're all taught that the 1800s were a century of progress, the Industrial Revolution, the rise of great cities, and the dawn of the modern age. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the grand buildings that anchor our oldest cities weren't built by our recent ancestors, but were inherited from a lost, global empire? Official history calls it progress, but a growing number of online researchers call it the largest cover-up in human history. This is the bizarre and fascinating conspiracy theory of the Tartarian Empire. And yes, they claim there was a great reset in the 1800s, borrowing a term from a modern-day controversy to describe a cataclysm they believe wiped the slate clean. Chapter 1: The Lost Empire on Old Maps. The first stop on this rabbit trail is in the pages of old atlases. For centuries, from the 1600s to the 1800s, hundreds of European maps show a vast territory labeled Tartary or Tartaria. It often stretches across Siberia, Central Asia, and even parts of China. To believers, this isn't just a forgotten name. It's the ghost of a world-spanning empire. They ask, why would so many different cartographers meticulously draw and label a massive empire if it never existed? For them, these maps are evidence of a unified global culture that was deliberately erased. This empire, they suggest, was the true builder of our world, with knowledge we can't imagine. Mainstream historians, however, have a straightforward explanation. Tartary was never a single empire, but a vague blanket term Europeans used for the vast, poorly understood regions of Asia. It was populated by various nomadic groups, who were broadly known as Tartars. Essentially, it was the 17th century equivalent of drawing here be dragons on a part of the map you knew very little about. As Russian exploration and conquest expanded through Asia, the name Tartary was gradually replaced with more accurate labels, like Siberia. Chapter 2: The Impossible Architecture. This is where the theory leaves old maps and steps into our cities. Proponents argue that the evidence for Tartaria is all around us, carved in stone and steel. They point to the magnificent, ornate buildings of the 18th and 19th centuries, the grand city halls, domed capitals, and stately courthouses, and they ask a simple, challenging question: how? How did a supposedly primitive society, with just horse-drawn carts and basic tools, erect these colossal structures with such incredible precision? The theory claims they didn't. Instead, these buildings are the surviving relics of the Tartarian Empire. Theorists point to the striking similarities in architectural styles across the globe, from the US to Europe and Asia, suggesting they were all part of a single, interconnected civilization. These structures, often featuring Greco-Roman columns and massive domes, are seen as too advanced and too uniform to be the product of separate, developing nations. Of course, the official record tells a very different story. Architects and historians explain this uniformity by pointing to the massive popularity of revival movements, especially neoclassicism and Beaux-Arts architecture. These styles, taught in famous schools like the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, were all the rage and were deliberately chosen to copy the grandeur of ancient Greece and Rome. We have the construction records, the blueprints, and even the photos. Yet, for believers, the sheer scale of this old-world architecture remains a glaring anomaly: a fleet of stone battleships and an era of wooden sailing ships. Chapter 3: The Buried World. Evidence of the Mud Flood. This is the part of the theory you've probably seen in viral photos online. It's the concept of a mud flood. Believers claim that sometime in the 19th century, a mysterious cataclysm buried the original ground level of cities worldwide under several feet of mud. The evidence, they say, is hiding in plain sight. Walk through the historic district of almost any major city and you might see it. Windows that open directly onto the pavement, doors that seem to lead nowhere, and grand archways that sink bizarrely below the modern street. Proponents present countless photos of these buried lower levels as proof. To them, these aren't basements. They are the original ground floors of colossal Tartarian buildings, submerged by a global deluge. The world we live in, they argue, is built directly on top of the ruins of a far grander one. This mud flood is the event that supposedly destroyed the Tartarian Empire and allowed new powers to rise from the mud, claim the buildings, and rewrite history. Skeptics and city historians, however, provide a far more mundane explanation: raising street levels. As 19th century cities grew, they desperately needed to install modern infrastructure like sewer systems, water lines, and gas pipes. The most practical way to do this was often to build up the streets, which buried the original ground floors of existing buildings and turned them into basements. What looks like a buried world is, according to city records, simply evidence of routine urban development. CTA called to action. So, what do you think? Are these architectural quirks signs of a forgotten cataclysm and a lost empire, or just a well-documented history of urban engineering and plumbing upgrades? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Chapter 4: Giants, Free Energy, and Suppressed Technology. From here, the theory takes a sharp turn into the extraordinary. Some researchers go beyond architecture to claim this lost civilization was powered by technologies we can only dream of. They look at the old cathedrals and domed government buildings not as places of worship or law, but as atmospheric power plants. The intricate metal spires, domes, and crosses on these old-world buildings are reimagined as antennas, capable of harvesting free energy directly from the ether. This supposedly provided clean, wireless electricity technology that was later suppressed. There is, however, no physical or historical evidence to support these claims. The theory also speculates about the builders themselves. To explain the massive scale of some ancient doorways and structures, some proponents suggest that the Tartarians were a race of giants. This idea often connects to myths of giants found in cultures worldwide. Architectural historians, though, note that oversized doors and high ceilings were simply an aesthetic choice, meant to create a sense of awe and grandeur, not to accommodate superhuman beings. These more speculative ideas are where the theory moves from historical reinterpretation into the realm of pure myth, fueled by a feeling that humanity has lost something vital. Chapter 5: The Great Reset and the Cover-Up. So, if a global empire with advanced technology really existed, how could it be completely erased from history? According to the theory, this was done through a Great Reset, a systematic effort to destroy the evidence and control the narrative. Believers point to a series of convenient catastrophes in the 19th and early 20th centuries as proof. The Great City Fires, like the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, are viewed not as accidents, but as deliberate acts of destruction aimed at wiping out Tartarian architecture. The rapid rebuilding is cited as proof that the builders were just restoring what was already there. The World's Fairs, like the 1893 Chicago World's Columbian Exposition, are central to this idea. Proponents claim the magnificent, sprawling white cities weren't temporary structures, as the official records state. Instead, they believe these were surviving Tartarian capitals, showcased one last time before being demolished. The historical account, supported by countless records, is that most of these fair buildings were temporary, made of a plaster-based material called staff over wooden frames, and were dismantled after the events. Finally, some believers claim that World War I and World War II were the final stages of the reset, providing cover to demolish the last remnants of Tartaria's great cities across Europe. Together, these events supposedly created a historical blank slate, allowing new powers to invent a history where they were the architects of progress, not just inheritors of a forgotten legacy. Conclusion: the Tartarian Empire is a compelling story. It's a narrative of a lost golden age, of beauty buried beneath our feet, and a grand conspiracy to hide the truth. It weaves together misunderstood maps, architectural wonders, and a deep distrust of the official historical record, leading some to call it the QAnon of architecture. Mainstream history, supported by archaeology and written records, presents a timeline of human progress that is slower, messier, and more grounded. It explains the anomalies of Tartaria as misinterpretations of geographical terms, architectural trends, and urban development. In the end, we're left with a choice. One history is documented and peer-reviewed. The other is whispered online, pieced together from pictures and patterns. asking us to believe the greatest empire in history was successfully erased. So, what are they hiding? Or is the more important question, why do so many of us feel like something is hidden in the first place? You decide.